The cabin of the international flight buzzed with activity as passengers boarded and settled into their seats. Overhead bins clicked shut, the hum of conversation filled the air, and flight attendants bustled through the aisles, managing last-minute seat adjustments and requests. Among the sea of travelers, Maria Rivera quietly found her assigned seat in economy class, a modest spot tucked against the window near the back of the plane. Her unassuming demeanor and simple attire, a comfortable sweater and well-worn jeans, made her blend into the background. Yet, the small bag she clutched tightly held stories of extraordinary compassion and dedication. Maria was a nurse returning home after a grueling volunteer mission in a remote village overseas. Her bag contained keepsakes from her patients, handwritten notes, small handmade trinkets, and photographs of the lives she'd touched. She was exhausted but content, her heart full from the work she had done. All she wanted now was to rest during the long flight and think about the family waiting for her at home. Before we continue this story, let us know where you're watching from. If you enjoy stories like this, subscribe to the channel, because tomorrow we have another special story for you. As Maria reached for the overhead bin to stow her bag, the lead flight attendant approached, her heels clicking sharply against the floor. The woman's posture was rigid, her expression impassive. Her name tag read Karen, and her demeanor matched every stereotype associated with the name. "Excuse me, miss," Karen said curtly, barely making eye contact. "You're blocking the aisle. Can you hurry it up?" Maria offered a polite smile. "I'm just putting my bag away. It won't take long." Karen huffed impatiently, muttering under her breath. Economy's always overbooked with this type. She gestured vaguely toward Maria as if she were an annoyance rather than a passenger deserving of respect. Maria hesitated, unsure if she'd heard correctly, but chose not to react. She wasn't here to argue or escalate the situation. With some effort, she managed to push her bag into the compartment and slid into her seat. Karen moved on without another glance, her tone much sweeter as she addressed a passenger in business class. Maria settled into her seat, trying to shake off the encounter. It wasn't the first time she'd been dismissed because of assumptions about her background, and she knew it wouldn't be the last. Still, it stung. She closed her eyes, taking a deep breath to center herself, and focused on the journey ahead. The flight took off smoothly, and soon the passengers were immersed in their own worlds, reading, watching movies, or dozing off. Maria kept to herself, flipping through the small collection of patient notes she'd brought along. She traced the edges of a photograph of a child she'd nursed back to health, her lips curling into a soft smile. A few hours into the flight, the tranquility was shattered by a commotion in the aisle. An elderly passenger, a frail man with thinning hair and a wrinkled brow, had collapsed on his way back from the restroom. Gasps rippled through the cabin as passengers craned their necks to see what was happening. The crew rushed to the scene, their professionalism cracking under the pressure of the unexpected emergency. Karen was among the first to reach the man, her usual composure replaced by visible panic. "Sir, can you hear me?" she asked, her voice wavering as she knelt beside him. "Does anyone here know first aid?" Passengers exchanged worried glances, but no one stepped forward. The tension in the air was palpable. Karen looked around desperately, her earlier confidence now replaced by helplessness. Maria watched the scene unfold, her instincts kicking in. Without hesitation, she unbuckled her seatbelt and stood up. "I'm a nurse," she said, her voice calm but firm. "Let me help." Karen turned to Maria, her face a mix of relief and residual skepticism. "You're a nurse?" she repeated, as if doubting the claim. "Yes," Maria said evenly. "Let me through." Karen hesitated for a fraction of a second before stepping aside, and Maria moved swiftly to the elderly man's side. She knelt beside him, her years of training and experience taking over. Gently, she checked his pulse and examined his breathing, asking quick, focused questions to gather information from those nearby. The man's face was pale, and his breathing was shallow. Maria suspected dehydration and a potential drop in blood pressure, common issues during long flights, especially for older passengers. She asked for water and instructed one of the attendants to fetch the emergency medical kit. Her calm demeanor reassured the passengers and crew, who watched her work with a mix of awe and gratitude. Karen hovered nearby, visibly uncomfortable, but no longer interfering. For the first time that evening, she seemed unsure of herself. As Maria continued administering care, Karen awkwardly offered to help, but Maria politely declined, focused entirely on stabilizing the man. Within minutes, the man's condition began to improve. Maria guided him back to consciousness, speaking to him in soothing tones as she propped him up and encouraged him to sip water. The cabin erupted into applause as the man gave a weak but grateful smile, nodding his thanks to Maria. "Thank you," Karen said quietly, her voice laced with embarrassment as she handed Maria a damp towel. "I didn't realize... you handled that really well." Maria accepted the towel with a small nod, her expression unreadable. "It's my job," she said simply, her tone free of malice. She returned to her seat without further comment, leaving Karen to process her own behavior. As the cabin settled down, passengers approached Maria, expressing their gratitude and admiration. A mother traveling with her children thanked her for stepping in, while an elderly woman clasped Maria's hands, her eyes filled with emotion. "You're an angel," she said softly. Maria smiled modestly, brushing off the praise. "I'm just glad I could help." Karen, however, was not so quick to recover. She lingered near the galley, her thoughts racing. The earlier scene replayed in her mind, each dismissive remark and assumption weighing heavily on her conscience. She couldn't escape the truth. She had judged Maria unfairly, and in doing so, she had almost jeopardized the safety of one of her passengers. As the flight neared its destination, Karen approached Maria once more, this time with genuine humility. "I owe you an apology," she said, her voice low. "The way I treated you earlier was wrong. I misjudged you, and I'm sorry." Maria looked up, her expression kind but firm. "Thank you for saying that," she replied. "But I hope this is a lesson for all of us, not just about me, but about treating everyone with respect, no matter who they are or where they come from." Karen nodded, her cheeks flushing. "You're absolutely right." As the plane landed and passengers prepared to disembark, the elderly man Maria had helped stopped by her seat. He held her hand tightly, his eyes glistening with gratitude. "Thank you for saving my life," he said, his voice trembling. "You'll never know how much this means to me." Maria squeezed his hand gently. "Take care of yourself," she said. "That's all the thanks I need." The passengers filed out, many of them casting admiring glances at Maria as they left. Word of her actions had spread throughout the cabin, and the atmosphere was one of collective respect and appreciation. As Maria stepped off the plane and into the bustling terminal, she carried herself with quiet dignity. She didn't seek recognition or accolades. Her actions had been driven purely by compassion and a commitment to her calling. But the impact of her response rippled far beyond the confines of that flight, leaving an indelible mark on everyone who had witnessed her grace under pressure. In the end, Maria's humility and strength spoke louder than any words ever could.